Yeah, diving into the Nick Fuentes thing, I have to say as well to the left wing people, this is the guy you need to worry about. Don't worry about Matt Walsh or none of them. Nick Fuentes. But I have to say, I think actually it does seem to me his cancellation came more from the right. And I think actually, I say the left should be worried of this guy. The right should be more. I think the right are actually far more scared of this boy, of this man, than the left are. But the left should be because he is gaining momentum, especially after he predicted the Iran Americans hitting Iran. But this stems from Kanye. What this is about to be about. This stems from Kanye. He said that I didn't think what Kanye said was really too controversial, and it's what I said in another video where to call yourself a Christian is a very it's a very hard thing to actually call yourself and live up to, because Kanye is kind of right what he said, that as a Christian you love everybody, that you that's kind of what comes with it, even if it's as bad as someone like Hitler. I don't know necessarily why he quite had to throw that name. I mean, there's plenty of other names he could have thrown out instead of Hitler, but he threw out Hitler. And then Nick Fuentes. I mean, you can tell who Kanye's been hanging around with. Nick Fuentes. But yeah, I haven't actually seen this. This is kind of Nick Fuentes doing a bit of damage control for his friend Kanye, who said some crazy stuff a little while ago. Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes is going back and forth. I don't know, I'm not going to watch all of this, but just a bit to kind of get the gist. Let's go.
Let's just get the Hitler thing out of the way. Do you actually admire Adolf Hitler?
In some ways, yes. And I'm not a national socialist, and I'm not I wouldn't identify that way because I'm a Christian. So I'm not any kind of a socialist or a fascist. I like Ye believe we should have a Christian government. It's a Christian country. God runs the world. We should have a government in accordance with that. But honestly, I don't share this histrionic Jewish view that Hitler is this exceptionally boogeyman, evil figure. The 20th century is full of violence. The 20th century is full of authoritarian ideologies run rampant, and that's a product of modernism and liberalism and all kinds of trends. But this idea that my life is in any way impacted by Hitler, I have a lot more animosity for the ADL. I have a lot more animosity for the ZOA. I have a lot more animosity for the groups that have actually made my life and the life of my family materially worse, personally and across the board with the society. I'm sick of being expected by Jewish media and Holocaust museums to beat my chest like you kind of did the other week and say, "Oh, I hate Hitler. Hitler's a." It's like this weird. It's like 1984. When they put the face on the TV and everybody's got to get all wound up. He's
You're
an
talking about
iconic
10 minutes.
figure.
You're talking about 10 minutes of hate. Well,
I can see as an American why you would say that Hitler had no effect, but I don't think anyone in Europe would actually think that, and especially us. It gutted us. That bankrupt our country, and our country really maybe now is only just starting to get back some type of something. But without a doubt, that was what crippled the British Empire. That's where you saw us starting to giving back Africa and things like that, because you just couldn't hold it no more. So yeah, and obviously with the Jewish people and gypsies and um, but then Nick Fuentes has a great point in the fact that there are left wing dictators in that same time period that far outdid the numbers of Hitler, and no one really talks about it. In fact, communism is very, you can quite easily put on your thing, I'm a communist, despite the fact that communism has killed hundreds of millions of people. But it doesn't have the same kind of thing in the West as what Hitler did. Um, yeah, you can see what he's saying there, to just hang it on Hitler. But yeah, Hitler's still Hitler.
legitimately hate Stalin, hate Mao, hate Hitler, hate the ADL, hate Barack Obama, hate the Democratic Party. And I've always, remember me on Piers Morgan? I didn't get a call from the ADL when I was on Piers Morgan, the most popular thing he ever did, the biggest thing CNN did that year, they had the ratings. They had like 50 million viewers for that. Their average show had like 10 million back then. And I said, Hitler took the guns, Stalin took the guns, Mao took the guns. And if you try to take our guns, 1776 will commence again. I've always criticized Hitler. I've made documentaries about the Bush family helping fund Hitler and the British royalty. So where we have a sticking point is that Alex got the call as you sent out on social media, and I'm just curious, do you think I actually got a call to come out and criticize Hitler? You think that's a new thing for me?
No, I know that you're very vocally anti-Hitler over the years. I know that you're more of a libertarian, and so you have this view of history which lumps in together Mao, Stalin, Hitler as authoritarians versus freedom fighters, capitalists. You know, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. So I'm familiar with your show and all of that. And honestly, it was a little bit glib. You called me baby Hitler. I said you got a call. You know, quite honestly, it's banter, but it is well known that you don't really talk about this issue. You're more talking about New World Order, Bill Gates, and these sort of obscure conspiracy theories like Bilderberg. My show's a lot more focused.
Yeah, do you know what as well? Nick Fuentes is, I never understood. I was always a big fan of, well, say a big fan. I've watched a lot of David Icke. I was a conspiracy guy, probably way more than left or right of anything. I was more into conspiracy theories. I'd never much into Alex Jones, but David Icke, I watched his whole lecture. There's a British journalist who hung around with David Icke and kind of wrote a piece on him. Was talking about David Icke, and he also said, I don't think David Icke is a liar or a grifter. I think he really believes what he says. He's like, and when he was with him, there was a lot of people saying that David Icke is anti-Semitic, and that when David Icke is talking about lizard pedos in the elite, what lizard pedo is a euphemism for Jewish people, and that's what some people were saying. I was saying that David Icke is anti-Semitic, and I've watched David Icke stuff and never have come away with the Jews are behind. Like Nick Fuentes said, that the conspiracy people, it's you don't really get the Jewish side of things, but I could never understand why people would say David Icke was anti-Semitic and against Jews and saying that he's talking in code when you don't. When me, as someone who listens to him, didn't pick up on that. Do you know what I mean? You don't get that vibe from him. And I wondered now, after watching about the Israel lobby and their kind of influence in the world, whether they kind of felt, because he's kind of just David Icke describing them in terms of what people say controlling the media and all these things, and they kind of had just took it on personally that he was talking about them, maybe because they are, but um, that always baffled me, and why people would go at David Icke saying he's anti-Semitic. Yeah, it's not the conspiracy world's boogeyman, like Nick Fuentes says.
On what you might call the Jewish question, which is what are we to do about this Jewish elite, these Jewish gangsters that run our Christian country? These people
I think that's a debate that should be had, because there's no doubt that leftism and the whole globalist power grab has wrapped itself in Judaism as its defense. And I would call the FTX folks and the federal regulators who all involved in this basically are Jewish, who are out there doing that, are criminals who happen to be Jewish who are hiding behind Judaism. But I don't then blame the average Jew for that. So I think that's the difference. Kind of like when Ye and you were on with Gavin McInnes, and he's like, well, blacks commit as proportionate more crime than the other group, but you don't just blame the average black person. Do you just not trust a Jew when they come in the room? And Ye goes, yeah, I don't, to me, that's what I'm saying is I do believe in Martin Luther King, that we judge individuals by who they are and what they do, not by what color they are or where they're from. But go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that in principle, but we also have to understand that it's not that these people happen to be Jewish. I think that's the big source of the disagreement. Is these are what we're told in the last few weeks when Ye makes these remarks about the Jewish media or Jewish Hollywood or so on, is, well, these are individuals. These are people that we've got to name them individually, and these are people that happen to be bad, or rather they are bad and happen to be Jewish. But I think there's something about their Jewishness that makes it this way. And I think that is really the source of the disagreement. My morality is not bound up in this authoritarian versus freedom thing. It's about God versus the devil. And the curious fact about the Jewish religion, which all the Jewish people that came to America in the last century as immigrants were religious. When the people came over at Ellis Island in the late 19th and early 20th century, they came from these rabbinical communities. They were all very religious. And so you've got all the Jews in America, elite, not elite. They're 1, 2, or 3 generations removed from these very religious, rabbinical Jewish communities. What's curious about the Jewish religion is it's the only one that has an extreme antipathy for Jesus Christ. Muslims revere Jesus as a prophet. Buddhists, Hindus, they review Jesus as a wise teacher. We all agree that Jesus existed. It's only the Jews that say that Jesus is burning in hell, boiling in semen and excrement, and say that his mother is a whore. And so you take these people that come from Europe, and again, it's their children, grandchildren, great grandchildren who are now in charge of the elite institutions.
Well, sure. I mean,
which
Nick,
are
I'll
turned
say
out.
this. Ethan Klein came out on his huge podcast and said, I would murder Jesus again. Jews should, basically kill Christians. And you didn't say kill Jews. So he went further than you and Ye, and no one decried it. And that is wrong. He said, I'm Jewish. I want to kill Jesus again. We should kill Jesus. We should basically kill Christians. And when he said it was like cute and funny and the media loved it. You didn't call for violence against anybody. So on a scale of me disagreeing with you, you're a 1, and Klein and the ADL are a 10. Look, I'm not friends with the ADL. I get what you're saying. I'm just saying that any authoritarian movement, I think, is extremely dangerous. And we're not faced with Hitler today. We're faced with the ADL and other authoritarian movements. So I think coming out and invoking Hitler almost gives those groups cover. And now, as you said, they're trying to get $500 million from Congress.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I think maybe that's more of a tactical disagreement. And I told you over the weekend, maybe this is my youth. I'm willing to humble myself and say I'm young and zealous and idealistic, as everybody can relate to that. But I do think I might be onto something here, which is that we've watched for 20, 30 years and things just keep getting worse. And we saw what happened in 2020. The election was stolen. The whole first term was rigged. And Trump comes back even weaker than before. And I'm like, when are we going to confront head on the fundamental problems? When are we going to head on confront?
All right, stay there. We'll talk about what you think the fundamental problems are when we come back. And then I'll give you my response to that and more. Nick.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole Christ, and it's true. I saw other Christians talking about it, that the Jewish religion are looking for a Messiah. They're looking to name a Messiah, which by definition of the Christians, that's the Antichrist. And then you've got people trying to, there's doomsdayers that are trying to push the Jewish Messiah to come, because the Jewish Messiah that comes is anything in Christian that moves away from Christ as being the Messiah is seen as an antichrist. But it's the Jewish, and you see them pushing for that. I've also seen the best argument for no Israel as well I've ever heard. I've always held the thing that Israel deserves a right to be there, and the Jews deserve the right to be there, but I actually heard a great thing for why there shouldn't be. One, as we're told, well, the Christian world is told that the Bible says you've got to look after Israel. The argument against that was that Israel wasn't going to be called Israel. There was a multiple number of names. That's just literally just a word. It could have been called anything. There was other names. It was going to be called Israel. So the fact that you can tell the Christian world that you've got to support this country when there was a chance it wasn't going to be called Israel anyway. But the other one was that the reason why they put the Jews there is because of the Holocaust and what the facing of persecution in either Europe or in America. And he's like, so they put them for their own safety back into what they consider their homeland, where they have been at war since day one of them being there. And he's like, if you've asked the question, has the Jews having Israel made it safer for them? And the answer is no. And he's like, also, you've got, whereas before this persecuted race of the Jews being separate all around the globe, are now all in one place that can be singly attacked and wipe them all out in one hit. So that kind of defeats the purpose of putting them there for their own safety. But also the other thing is that they're the number one beneficiary of American aid, and obviously, I guess countries in Europe give to Israel. So they moved them out of these countries, which now are the countries that are protecting them, in a more hostile area than where they was in the first place. It completely defeats the purpose of why they was there initially, to keep them safe. Not for one day have they been safe in that area. That's the best argument I've ever heard, and I'm a pro-Israel. If to be honest, more than anything, I'm not an anti-Palestine, but I'm not an anti-Israel either. I think they have their right, but that's the first. They're the best arguments I've ever heard for why Israel. It's pointless. They were moved there to make them safer, and they've been at wars forever. The countries they was moved out of to keep them safe are now the ones paying money to keep them safe in their homeland where they're supposed to be safe. It made no sense. Makes no sense. And yeah, logically you go, yeah, completely defeats the purpose of what the whole thing was about anyway. But yeah, um, yeah, this is up on Rumble if you want to go and watch the rest of it on Alex Jones's thing. But yeah, that's the. Let me know your thoughts. That's the reaction. Sweet.